Boy, oh boy. Dark, season 1, episode 8. If you know, you know. If you've watched, you know, and I don't know why you would be watching my video if you haven't watched season 1, episode 8. Definitely, this episode was a turning point for me. Not only did this include one of the most disturbing scenes, I was horrified by that scene, and yes, you know which one, and yes, we're going to talk about it. After I finished watching this episode, I was like texting people, you gotta watch this show. I texted my brother who turned me on to the show. This is the best fucking show in the world. All I have to say is, Ulrich, your raggedy ass, we have a big beef, and you're so stupid, and you don't know the first rule of time travel. You live in 2019. You don't know the first rule, the first freaking thing about time travel. So let's get into it. Dark, episode 8 is called As You Sow, So Shall You Reap. It's basically about facing the consequences of your actions. And in some cases, it might be across decades. We're still in kind of this debate on destiny, free will, choice, the domino effect of choices. Are we just characters playing roles, or do we actually have any say in what the heck goes on? This episode made me need an emotional support beast to kind of help me through this. And just so you guys know, I called my German stepmom and asked her how to pronounce Helga. This episode starts with a quote from Shakespeare. Hell is empty and all the devils are here. And boy, are these devils here. The only person I really liked in this episode was Egon. Even though his outfit is giving the Third Reich, this quote reminds me of an Aldous Huxley's quote, which is, what if our Earth is kind of another planet's hell? And also the stranger calls Wyndon this festering wound. And I think we really just see the dark sides of humankind, even the dark sides of family and relations. I also think it speaks to something that we know Egon has struggled with for decades, which is, are people born evil or do they become evil? Are murderers born or are they made? And with freaking Ulrich, it's a little bit of both, right? He was a horrible kid, and we don't know a lot about his family tree, but we're gonna learn a little bit more about his family tree. We obviously know that not only is he just a shitty kid, but also a bad person, selfish, but then is also driven to do really bad things by circumstances as well. So we're officially in 1953, new era unlocked. A young Helge rides his bike through the woods. He drives by a construction site where a young Egon is investigating 2 dead boys. These dead boys have appeared the same way that Mads Nielsen did, with the 1 pfennig coin tied with a red cord around their neck as a necklace, as well as their eyes burnt out and their eardrums ruptured. Like I said, loving the outfits in this period. I mean, man, why don't we dress like that anymore? Why are we wearing these clothes made from China? The billboard marking the site reads, an important investment, nuclear energy for every household. We know that the power plant had been around in the 80s, and it seems to be being constructed in the 50s. I had this thought that I wrote down in my notes as I was watching this. I wrote, construction site, bodies, are they warnings, question mark, from the future against nuclear power, all to get the power plant shut down because something bad is going to happen with it. I don't know if that thought has any merit at all, or if I'm just kind of grasping at straws here. With their eyes burnt out or being from the future, are they brought through to the future where something bad happens and they're sent back to the past to be like, this is what becomes of people? Watch out. Like, you'd think there's a better way to leave a note though. Like, maybe we could get a sticky note or a computer with a hard drive and a video saying, hey, don't build this. My other question that I wrote down is, why hasn't there been a record in Wyndon of mysterious bodies showing up in this manner? Like, if bodies are showing up, if bad things are happening, you'd think that there would be some better record keeping, unless someone destroyed those records. While we're getting set up in the 1950s, we go in and out of this conversation between the stranger, who I'm even more sure is Jonas, and H.G. Tannhaus. I believe they're in 1986. They talk about the Einstein-Rosen bridge, which we learn is a passage between a black hole and a white hole, and it basically allows for wormholes to travel between time and space. He later explains the concept of wormholes, and it's kind of similar to how it was explained in Interstellar. Meanwhile, Ulrich, back in 2019, follows into the caves, finding the red cord cord, and an anchor point, which is a little ring, a snake eating its tail. I learned that this is called an Ouroboros, which symbolizes the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. So remember that Trinity knot that I discussed in the last episode? Same kind of symbolism: life, death, rebirth. It represents eternal cycles, renewal, and the unity of opposites, suggesting that the universe and all things within it are interconnected and self-contained. How is that for on-the-nose symbolism? Eternal cycle, the nature of duality, and we talk about duality with the stranger and Tannhaus later. We think of life as a duality of black and white, of life or death, but then there's this third dimension, not just up and down, but center. I know my hand gestures are really helping you, huh? Future, present, and past. Again, they reference in their conversation the Trinity knot. When I looked up the origin of the snake eating its tail, just like the Trinity knot, it's been used across cultures and time. It's kind of one of those things that appear in different cultures and timelines. However, it was visible in ancient Egypt. Do you know what else was visible in ancient Egypt? That's right, Hermeticism. Remember, we talked about Hermeticism. We talked about the emerald tablet. One thing that I actually wrote independently in my notes before I looked this up is with the 1 pfennig coin, the coin that's tied around their necks with red rope, and it's a coin from 1986, it reminded me of ancient Egypt, how they would put treasures in people's tombs, in their sarcophagi, almost like it's passage for going into another world. Okay, am I onto something here? Don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me, don't tell me. I feel like I'm onto something. Ulrich reaches a fork in the tunnel, and for a second, I am getting jerked around with the hope I'm feeling. I felt hope once more that he would stumble into 1986, bring his child back. I just want to see that freaking reunion. But no, homie takes a left when he should have gone right, and he chooses the path that goes to 1953. Back in 1953, a young Helga arrives to his very large home. It's giving the Von Trapp family. This home, this castle, if you will later become the Winden Hotel. We know his family's very wealthy. Now his mother, very weird vibes. Weird. She is very prim and proper, has a giant stick up her ass, but I got sinister vibes from her. I got abusive vibes from this woman. Did anybody else? When she's telling him to undress, like, it feels weird, right? And then she goes upstairs to fetch him more clothing, and I thought she'd be coming down with a paddle. I know he's bullied, but I saw bruises on his body in a later shot when he's in the woods. And we know he's a little slow, he's behind in math, struggles a bit, he's a loner, he's bullied, but what is going on at home? At the police station, the men are giving Egon and Daniel, who's also the father of Ines Conwald, I know, weird, an autopsy report. Each one has a 1 pfennig coin on a red cord. Their eyes were burned, eardrums were shattered. Now, very interesting here, the description of the children. One is dark-skinned, possibly foreign, as they say, Mediterranean, and the other has red hair. If we're kind of keeping track of the boys that have gone missing, it would appear that this is Yasin and Eric, which made me wonder, does this mean that Mikkel actually wasn't abducted and was just ran into the caves, found his way into the thing? Later, Daniel and Egon have an interesting conversation. Basically, why do people kill? Which is something I think we can all wonder about. Are killers born or made? And this whole scene is very disturbing to Egon, who seems rather new and early into his career as a police officer. Is this kind of why he's so hard on Ulrich and so quick to think Ulrich is the problem? And young Helge walks into the cabin, the creepy cabin, which is owned by his family, and he's basically doing what kids used to do before video games and phones and 6-7 and TikTok, playing with sticks. He's later, as he's leaving the cabin where he likes to play because he has no friends, he's robbed and peed on by 2 boys. Ulrich, meanwhile, comes out of the woods, stumbling around looking for the old man, and asks young Helge, hey, have you seen this guy? Helge is like, no. And then Ulrich's like, hey, if you don't start defending yourself and fighting back, these bullies will never stop. Take it from me, a bully. Helge almost seems invigorated by the idea, and this is the first freaking moment that Ulrich has come in and set off a chain reaction with his stupid ass actions, okay? You go and you give some unsolicited freaking advice to someone now that's gonna live their life, show up a different way. We cut back to the stranger and Tannhaus, and they're discussing very like heady, lofty concepts, very on the nose. They talk about Nietzsche's cycle of eternal recurrence, and this goes back to that lunar solar cycle that repeats every 33 years. So back to everything being Ulrich's fault. He meets his father back when Tronte was less weird, but also just as weird. And his grandmother, Agnes, who looks hot as hell, right? She looks very different from everyone else in this raggedy ass town. They seem out of place for the town. It finally dawns on Ulrich's dumbass that he's time traveled, and that should be his first hint to shut the fuck up. Excuse my French, I will be cussing a lot in this episode, so just make sure that you're not around young children like Helga was young and his innocence was taken by a rock. We cut to a younger version of Tannhaus in 1953 in his watch store. Ulrich comes in, guns blazing basically, being like, hey, did you write this book? It has your name on it, but it's clearly a very old picture of you. And one little bit of effort, it's called opening the front page, looking at the copyright statement, seeing the publication date, probably a good sign not to go wave it in somebody's face. I mean, have you ever seen Harry Potter? Have you seen any movie involving time travel? You can't change the past. It changes the present. It changes the future. And Ulrich is a fucking idiot. He truly is. It's beyond me. This is probably what turned Tannhaus from a humble watchmaker to an explorer of world. That and finding a freaking smartphone in his pocket. We then see teen versions of Jana, who is Ulrich's mom. Ines is picking up her father's watch. Ulrich even goes, Mama, Mom, it's my mom. Man, shut up. Ulrich, shut up. He gets an even bigger shock when Ines mentions the 2 dead boys at the construction site, and he's like, shit, is my son there? I better go check. And also, meanwhile, just stumble around and do a bunch of other shit that's going to change the future. He leaves his jacket because he's in such a... This is a really bad policeman, leaving evidence everywhere. We then jump to the home of Claudia Tiedman. She's the little girl. Her father is Egon. Claudia will eventually take over the nuclear power plant, and she's teaching Helga math skills because he's a little behind on math, very behind on math, some would say. This house will later become Ulrich's house, which we see a kind of Nielsen infiltration happen at some point in this. What's interesting to me is that Claudia's family, they don't seem poor, but they obviously are not as rich as Helga. Like Helga's family are like the Kardashians of the town. Are they taking in boarders because they need the money? Or is this just something to do? They have an extra room, why not? Or are they hurting for cash? Helga's rich family is paying Claudia to tutor their son. And then later, Claudia is the boss bitch and Helga is like this security guard. Also, Bernd Doppler is Helga's dad and he's the one creating the power plant. He suspects that like big coal is involved and leaving weird mutilated bodies there and sabotaging the nuclear thing. It seems like it's taking a lot for people to be like, this is a new way of doing things. We're gonna do cool things with nuclear energy. And obviously there's resistance. Agnes and Trant show up at the Tiedman house because they're interested in renting a room. They'll be boarders. This was a common thing back in the day. Claudia is showing Trant around the property outside of their home. Helga is kind of trundling along. Now remember, Claudia and Trant will eventually have an affair later. In 33 years. The kids aren't necessarily like being mean to Helga, but they're definitely excluding him. They're making him feel like an awkward third wheel and that he's not wanted. Now, I don't know if he was feeling a little brave because of what Ulrich's bitch ass told him, but eventually he kind of cruelly throws a stick into the cave. Gretchen, the dog, runs after it and then becomes a 1986 dog. I don't know. We don't see her again. She is lost. So Egon comes home and it seems like Egon's not home a lot. Like he's very in the office. He comes home and finally meets their boarder, Agnes, and like they're kind of giving each other like some eyes. I know he notices her beauty, but he tries to keep calm, but then she's giving him the eyes. Like she's giving Jezebel, like she's giving harlot. Well, but let's be real, because Egon's wife is a baddie too. So what's this man doing? But then later we see that Doris, Egon's wife, is kind of making the bed, fluffing the sheets for Agnes, and she kind of touches her hand and then they're kind of like, what? And we know that Agnes's husband is dead, but we don't know if she killed him. And we don't know if she's going to kind of come in and get her little tentacles in both of them and then take over their house. So now, hold on, I need to like spray the camera with holy water or something because we're going to get into the scene with Ulrich and Helga, and I'm like getting a physical reaction to having to talk about this. I didn't even write any notes down because I knew I would remember exactly what happened. So he meets young Helga in the forest, who's playing outside of his home with the dead birds that they fall out of the sky. Ulrich's like, did you kill those birds? And he's like, no, but they're beautiful when they're dead. Okay, young serial killer. Basically, Ulrich has this idea of like, well, I can change the past and I can change the future. If you killed my brother, you took my son, but if you're not around to do that, then it won't happen. And he runs after him, and he runs to the cabin, and Ulrich takes a stone and starts bashing this kid's head in. Like my earring just fell out. That's how disturbing this is. And we see his little legs flailing. This was so freaking disturbing. My God. But right away, of course, as the viewer, we're realizing it's not gonna work. He doesn't die. And if anything, Ulrich's dumb ass is causing what happened. Ulrich is always at fault here. I think that is what we can just take away from this is Ulrich. It's his fault. He cheats on his wife. He's not there for his family. His son goes missing while he's off snogging Hannah. He sucks and he's changing the past and he doesn't know the first rule of time travel and he's just a bitch. Ulrich is a bitch. At least he has the decency to feel bad. Now look, I'm not a parent. I don't have children and I certainly don't have children that have gone missing. Maybe I would bash someone's head in if they took my dog. I don't know. I think there are other ways to maybe mitigate things, but it happens and it's horrible and it's terrible, and he brings him into that cellar door and just sits there and looks there all night, and we know that he survives. Now we know that he has scars on his face when we see him later. We know that he has an issue with his ear. Now remember last episode where Yana says that she sees some guy some priest arguing and that he had a thing with his ear? Is that Helga? I think it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. But this causes some sort of brain damage, right? But then remember at the beginning of last episode, he wakes up in the bunker. So is he going to get recruited to something? Is this his villain arc? What happens? See, that's why you can't mess with the past, because you create somebody's villain arc. And I don't want to talk about that anymore. Cut back to the Doppler house, and Egon goes there to see if they could find Gretchen the dog. He's greeted by Greta. She's so freaking rude. At first I thought she was like, my husband's not here. Like they were gonna bang or something, since everyone in this freaking festering wound of a town seems to be cheating. She just hates him. Like the air of superiority is so real, this woman. Then we see a montage with all the faces kind of coming together across the years. We see Claudia. We know what she looks like as a middle-aged woman, but then we see a new version of her, an older woman, and she's the one standing in front of that faces board that we saw earlier. So we know that maybe once she learns the secrets of the power plant, she has something more to do with the hidden secrets. We also see the juxtaposition of that cabin, that bunker where Helga once played and pretended that a stick was a rifle. We see real artillery. He was pretending pine cones were grenades. We see real grenades. So some shit happened, and it seems like there must be a sort of organized movement here. We then cut back to a super fascinating scene at the clock shop where the stranger basically says like, hey man, everything that you're thinking about, all this nerd shit you're doing, it's real. I'm from the future. He gives that machine to the stranger and says like, you need to fix it because it was destroyed. And this is where my brain hurts again. A wormhole was apparently created by an incident that created a blast of energy. We don't know what that was. When I see nuclear power plant, I think explosion. He wants Tannhaus to fix the machine so that he can actually destroy the wormhole and make it so that people can't be time traveling anymore. The stranger calls Winden a festering wound and claims he can fix it. Tannhaus is not interested. He's like, get out of my shop. But then we see him go up on a ladder and pull the machine. This machine, at first I thought like, oh, he has a backup. But now I'm like, no, this is the original machine. This is the machine that then becomes the machine that is broken. But he didn't want to tell the stranger that. As the episode closes, we are back in 1953 in the same watch shop, and H.G. Tannhaus goes into Ulrich's pocket, finds a freaking smartphone and is like throws it like a hot potato. He's like, what the F is this? Can you imagine? Like you play with like wind up telephones and typewriters and then you see a smartphone. It is a paradigm shift. This disrupts his reality, and it can probably be why he ends up investigating things like time travel, wormholes, etc. This leaves a lot of questions, like what's going to happen to Helga, you know, just how all these characters evolve. Like I said in my last video, it's crazy that we're caring about characters, the same different versions of characters through the timeline. Now, one super interesting thing, old Helga in the nursing home talks about like, I can change it, I can change the future, I can change the past. I was thinking this whole time that maybe he's talking about going back in time and he has an answer, but what if he's just like repeating the last things he heard before his accident, which is what Ulrich said. Anyway, guys, I have to stop it there. I need to get my ass on the couch and watch episode 9. I know this was a rather animated, energetic, potty-mouthed episode, but this is when shit gets so freaking real, freaking locked in, and that was so disturbing. And Ulrich, this is what I have to say to you. But then I also kind of get it, and there's no good guys. There's no good. Who are we rooting for? Jonas? Thank you so much to everyone who's supporting with this rewatch, including all of my friends who came in through Severance and are starting Dark or revisiting Dark. Thank you. I really appreciate every comment, every engagement, every poem. I'm looking at you. Big shout out to my Waffle Party VIP members. Thank you to Marlon Yamzon, Dolores Abernathy, Daniel Ariano, Bo Dierker, Matt Winbury, Chris Bazeski, and Jim Rodney. And thank you to all of my other Patreon supporters. Just be careful out there. I say it every time, don't go in the forest alone. Let me know if I should do an actual reaction watch along for the finale. I'll see you next time. Bye.